But just to simplify, the law was passed, we're following the law, and prior to that, we were following the law as well. So everything that has been approved by this commission and also by state law is exactly what corrections has been following. So through the chair, our legal advisor, Pat Cummings.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Pat Jones Cummings, how may I help you?
Yeah, what is the cost per day to fund the agreement between Miami-Dade County and ICE? What is the cost to this administration?
I don't have the cost per day. Just to let you know, we already have those individuals in our custody as we speak. But I do not have the costs.
Okay. I started by indicating that immigration is a complicated matter. And as a result of decisions taken at the federal and state level, now officers, local officers, are deputized to enforce immigration. My question to you is that how many people have been trained by ICE to this day? Because since this item aims to be retroactive, and I don't know why it is retroactive. It is concerning to me that it is retroactive. There is no reason for it. There is no need for it. How many of our officers have been trained to this day?
As of now, none of our officers have been trained.
None has been trained, and we do not know the costs. And my last question before I make a statement is, can we get confirmation that the county retains the right to exit the agreement in the future?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Can we get confirmation that the county retains the right to exit if something happens, whatever the reason, retains the right to exit this agreement in the future?
Based on the statutory law that just passed, as long as there's an approval from the new immigration board that has been created, we can then, if they approve, then yes, we can then withdraw from that agreement.
Through the chair.
Statutorily, the 287G agreement is statutory, and we must stay in that agreement.
Thank you very quickly. Madam Mayor, did you have?
Yes, I just wanted to offer that we have our county attorney who handles these matters also available for questions for the commissioner as to the history of the agreements and as to the current practice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Commissioner, as you
Yes, go ahead.
give me one moment to make sure. Can we lower our voices just a tad bit, please? Chair? I love that suit you're wearing. Madam Commissioner, you've heard those answers. Would you like for the county attorney to give you some historical context?
I do not need the county attorney to speak right now. I have some points I'd like to make before I make my motion.
You have the floor, Madam Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have serious reservations about this item, Madam Mayor and staff. At a time when our county is demanding residents to bear the cost of 5 new constitutional offices and the potential costs of landfilling, I'm concerned about making decisions, unfunded decisions, to add to the cost of our residents, especially if those costs are not reimbursed. In the 2018 report, Madam Mayor, it is estimated that they would cost the county, that was 2018, $14 million to detain immigrants. That was the cost 7 years ago. And I have no doubt that this cost has increased right now. With those millions of dollars, we could hire over 300 teachers, build more elementary schools, and pay child care for 18,000 children. 287G is worrisome to me because of the fiscal impact on the county. What does it do? Because that's why I said before I asked the questions, to put everything in a contextual framework, that we have to enter this MOU with a wide eye. We cannot just sign it. We have to understand the implications. It requires the county to keep people who probably were detained for any reasons whatsoever. Counselor, immigrants can be detained because they couldn't pay their traffic tickets. They can be detained because of child support. And then they are released, but because they are an immigrant, we're going to sign the MOU to keep them in jail. We need to understand what we are signing. I'm not saying that we will not sign it, we should not sign it, but we need to enter this agreement with open eyes. 287 is bad fiscally for the county because it requires the county to keep people who've been detained, who served their time, longer, and that cost may not be reimbursed. That's why, if you recall, the county stopped honoring the detainers because we are not getting reimbursed. If approved, listen to this now, we agree that police officers who are understaffed, overworked, will be required to make immigration arrests. Even if they are given, and you did indicate, Madam, that no training has been provided. Even if they don't have any training, or if they are given minimal training, and we know how complex immigration law is, it is a complex matter, we're gonna deputize these officers to make arrests. And in a county that is as diverse as ours, this could result in false imprisonment, discrimination arrest for Hispanics and Blacks members, and this could be our residents, our teachers, our workers, those who have been working for years and paying taxes here. And this county could be subject to lawsuits. I'm going to add that the fact that protections, humanitarian protections, was recently terminated for 300 Venezuelans and 500,000 Haitian immigrants, this potentially could mean that those who are detained, who were invited to come here legally because of any problems with the law, could be subject to deportations to nations that are in turmoil where their lives might be in danger. Yes, we have to follow the law, but we also have to keep into consideration, we have a duty to protect the health, safety, and morals of thousands and thousands of our residents. We have to take their cases into consideration who have been living here for years and paying taxes. We cannot rush into signing an MOU, and I'm not saying we should not, but we have to understand the implications, and I think as a body, we have a responsibility to have answers to this question before we sign. There is no emergency, there is no life and death emergency that pressure us to sign right now before we have answers to some of the questions, because we as a county could be held liable.
Madam Commissioner?
I'm not finished,
Oh,
Mr.
that's what
Vice
I was
Chair.
about to ask you.
I'm not finished.
Go ahead.
Mr. Vice Chair. This is important. I want us to understand that in agreeing to the ICE detainers, we may contribute to send people who are invited here legally, like those who came with humanitarian parole, the 300,000 Venezuelans and 500,000 Haitians and more will be coming, because there is a plan to, by the new administration to stop temporary protected status, and also, as you saw, they've already stopped eliminated the humanitarian parole. It is also unconstitutional to keep people longer in detention in violation of their Fourth Amendment rights, as they would otherwise be freed on bond. If I'm arrested for any reason, for a misdemeanor or whatever, and then I'm detained, when I'm released. But if you are an immigrant, the county is signing to keep you in jail. This is a clear violation of these immigrants' constitutional rights. The citizen of Miami-Dade County should not be held in jail just to satisfy federal policy. We should not. And you know, Madam Mayor. Ultimately, this item is an example demonstrating who we are and who we want to be. 60%, 54 to 60% of the residents here in Miami-Dade County were born outside of the US. Now, do we want to be a county that is using our resources wisely, expanding our workforce, and creating a society that works for everyone? Or are we a community that decides to use our resources to target residents who've been working for years, paying taxes, residents who during COVID, while all of us were allowed to stay home, was working in our farms, working in our restaurants, working in our hotels, keeping our county together? Yes, we have to sign an MOU. But we have to understand also, when we're doing it, what we're doing. We have to enter this agreement with a wide eye. So, Madam Mayor and staff, I move to amend this item to include a report due within 180 days. There is no emergency here. You don't know how much it's going to cost to the taxpayers, and you are elected to be good stewards of our tax dollars. You don't know how much it's going to cost. No one has been trained. Immigration is a complex issue, and we are deputizing public health professionals whose job should be to keep us safe in the county. We are deputizing them to arrest people, detain them when they have not received any training. I move to amend this item to include a report due within 180 days on the actual costs before we enter this agreement. And let me add this. 1 second. 1 second. Training is extremely important. We need to know about the costs. And we need, Madam Mayor and Lori, we need to get a legal opinion about the liability for the county. What if someone is injured while being transferred to these jails? What if someone dies during the transfer? So these are questions, colleagues, that we should consider before we sign this MOU.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And that's my amendment. I move to amend the item to include a report due within 180 days on the actual costs and then the training and then answers to the liability that this may pose for us.
Commissioner Gonzalez, you're recognized, and also state if that would be a friendly amendment or not.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And, respectfully to my colleague, I reject that amendment. Respectfully, I do understand where you're coming from. I understand your heart. So I want to make something clear. I am an immigrant. I was born in Guatemala. My parents came to this country when I was 3 years old. My dad cut grass when he first got here. What we're talking about here is not controversial, with all due respect, my friend. What we're talking about here is upholding the law. As a matter of fact, to the mayor's credit, we have been doing this for a very long time. So my question, respectfully, is how long have we been following detainers?
Since 2017.
Since 2017. Since 2017, we've been doing this. So this is not anything new. This is something we've already been doing because we have always been in compliance with the law. Now, to further state that, let's talk about the economic impact. I am pretty sure, and I'm going to ask the administration this, but I'm pretty sure that the administration has already done their due diligence on this because I know that you guys are trying to save money. Are you familiar with 908.1033, which is the local law enforcement immigration grant program? If so, would this provide the economic monies that we would need in order to stay in compliance with this law?
Those funds are available based on that statute. That's correct.
So we already have these funds available for by virtue of this statute. We've already asked for those funds, and this is not going to cost the county anything more. Folks, all I'm talking about here, all we're doing here today is asserting that Miami-Dade County is following the law. This is not controversial. This is literally just us not violating the law. As a matter of fact, the reason it is retroactive is because we've been doing this since 2017. It has already been signed, and all we're doing is ratifying something that we've been doing, which is following the law. So with that, respectfully, I call the question, and let's just take this to vote.
I'll second that.
The question has been called. There's a motion. A question has been called. There's a motion. There's a second. This is all in favor, signify by say, but a question has been called. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Show the record reflecting Commissioner Bastian as a no. All right. I think we have one last one.
Yes, 803 and its supplement.
All right, 803. Let's get started with Commissioner from District 7.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an item that actually came out of infrastructure. We explained it at infrastructure, and then it was changed in appropriations. We have been meeting with the vendor, and the vendors are here. They had sent us a letter about what they could or could not do, and staff and the administration has provided a supplement. As I explained in the infrastructure committee, and I tried to explain in appropriations, this is an issue that we've been dealing with for some time at Water and Sewer. There is a large majority of folks that pay with credit cards. This board actually unanimously passed an item urging the state of Florida to change the rules so that we could lower the fees that the banks charge us, because this is really about the fees that the banks charge us, not so much about the administrative fee that is being placed on it by the vendor. When I went to Tallahassee during committee week, I met with several folks on this, and there was zero interest from the folks that do the banking piece to change those fees. In fact, what they were talking about is augmenting those fees. One of the things that I spoke to our representatives about was the difference between the debit and the credit. Obviously, with a credit card, there's more risk. With the debit, there is less risk. The debit card is more like a bank account. And this is something that Julio Robaina has actually been trying to change for several years at the state level. So the administration has proffered several options. We are working on an RFP so that we can incorporate a bunch of different payment methods. But most people set it and forget it when it comes to water and sewer. And as I tried to mention in appropriations, number one, not everyone in Miami-Dade County has a bank account. And number two, what will happen, I mean, we can educate people as best as possible. And one of the options is to give them an option to switch before they pay the fee if they have a bank account. But more often than not, what will happen if we decide to change this dramatically is that many users will simply not have that payment. Then they'll get a call, then there'll be a disconnection fee that'll be levied, and then there'll be a reconnection fee. So I wanted staff to talk about that process. If the director can come up and explain to the board kind of what the worst case scenario is, because we've really worked very hard over the last 2 months to try to find a solution. But the bulk of this really is at the state level and the fees that we are being forced to pass down. I will say that, as we mentioned in committee, a set fee for residents and a percentage for commercial, I think would be very difficult for our small businesses, and it would just be very painful. So I don't recommend that as an option. We can also talk about that. But Madam Director, if you can speak to what would happen with the change, and then what are the fees associated with the disconnection and the reconnection from the water and sewer perspective?
Through the chair.
You're recognized, Director.
For the record, my name is Amanda Kinnick, Interim Director of the Water and Sewer Department. This item that you see before you, 803, is an extension of the contract for our electronic payment processor. The extension was a 1-year term with 2 one-year options to renew. As mentioned by the Commissioner at the Appropriations Committee, it was amended to remove the increase of the convenience fee, and that a convenience fee is associated with the debit card and credit card. I will also acknowledge, as part of these electronic payments, it includes ACH that does not have an associated convenience fee because it links directly to your bank account. So to answer the Commissioner's question, with the amendment, the convenience fee was removed, and our vendor ACI is here to speak to those impacts, but it was communicated to the department that without that increase to the convenience fee, they will no longer be able to provide the debit card and credit card payment processing for the department. Potentially, they could still continue to do the ACH electronic processing. To answer your question regarding the disconnection and the reconnection, if a customer does not pay their water bill, and after we reach out and do their due diligence to try to get them on a payment plan or to pay their bill, we are then forced to disconnect them. They will be charged a $23 disconnection fee, and then to reconnect, it's another $23 connection fee.
So when you do the due diligence, we normally find the individual, we get them on the phone, and then what usually happens when you get them on the phone? How do they usually pay?
Many times they pay over their phone through the credit card, the debit card. We have a variety of ways to pay. You can come in person, but normally through the collection process, they would, pay as quick as possible, which is through the online means.
But just I want the board to understand, if they cannot pay at that moment when you have them on the phone, because we're stopping the disconnection because we found them, right? So we're not moving forward with the disconnection. If they cannot pay at that moment, what becomes the process then?
Depending on the circumstances, each person is different, but we can put a pause in their bill and give them some flexibility. We try to accommodate as best as we can, but at a certain point, we do need to move forward with the disconnection process.
So let's say that they don't have a bank account and they say that they're going to physically go down there and pay in cash, but we give them a certain number of days. If that doesn't happen, then we would disconnect.
Correct.
All right, so I just want to say for a second, there's other pooling commissioners, but I just want to say something. and in my briefing with the administration, we touched on this with the mayor and Chief Coley. I don't want to, first, Director, respectfully, you said a whole lot of what Commissioner Regalado originally stated. You just kind of repeated it in your own words. I choose not to believe that this government, the largest in the state of Florida outside of the state itself, will allow that scenario to occur. The mayor has emergency powers. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Shall this company decide to walk out? And by the way, let me back up. I'm in favor of a resolution today for this company to continue for a period of time. I am in favor of that. So I'm not arguing against an option, one of the 3 options in the memo, in the supplement that I attached per the administration. But I don't like to lie to the people or mislead them. I want to hear from the administration. If today, which will not happen, I don't anticipate that happening, a vote is taken for this company not to be a partner in Miami-Dade County, will the administration not take emergency power actions to fulfill the water and sewer responsibilities and payments of these? And will we actually shut off people's waters? That is important, because while I am in favor of a resolution today, based on the supplement provided by the administration, I also don't want for a soundbite to mislead the residents of Miami-Dade County. If today, this is the question, so I can clarify. If today, not that I anticipate this happening, but if today this body chooses not to renew this agreement and not to accept the increase in rate, and said company walks away, will we shut people's waters off? It's a yes or no question. We know that there is alternatives. We know that we will, of course, make a decision to come to an agreement with either the same company or a new company to measure this. And we know that the administration, and knowing that the administration has emergency powers to fulfill the obligations of this county, will it be the intent of this government to shut people's waters off and charge them with late fees?
Certainly not, Mr. Chair.
That's what I thought. I don't want to be misleading. I don't want to be misleading. I knew that would be the answer, Mayor. That said, we do have a responsibility as this body to move this forward. We consider these companies, I assume it's, and I shouldn't assume because you know what happens, but it's the 4 gentlemen sitting in the front. We want a partnership. We want to make sure that it is not just for the 1 year with the two additional options. We want a long-standing partnership, but it needs to make sense. It needs to be the right thing for the residents of Miami-Dade County. Luckily, probably, even though we're public servants, most of us could probably afford that on this dais, but not everybody in the county can. I've heard bickering of, well, it's just 50 cents. Why are we arguing over 50 cents or 53 cents? Well, guess what? It might just be 50 cents to you. But to the family that can't even afford to do their groceries and their kids are eating limited food, it's not just the 50 cents the way that I've heard the bickering. I just wanted to clarify that. With that, Commissioner from District 11, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And respectfully, I do appreciate you getting on the record with that, because I don't appreciate scare tactics. I really don't. And I see that the company is present today, and I appreciate the fact that they're present. But the fact of the matter is that they weren't present at the last 2 committee meetings. And that's very challenging to me, specifically because I think that there are many companies that would love a shot at getting this contract. I am actually positive of that. Now, with all due respect, I do think that this company's been doing a good job. But what I am not in favor of, and as a matter of fact, my colleague, Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, said this in committee, what I am not in favor of is becoming a rubber stamp and just having this board be a group of elected officials that allow bureaucracy to make decisions. Now, I have had many meetings with the mayor. I understand what happened here. The mayor has assured me this is never going to happen again. But it's a matter of principle at this point. Now, I was going to vote for this because of the amendments we made in the Appropriations Committee, thanks to Commissioner Cohen-Higgins' leadership. and this removal was subject to the vendor's approval. The vendors did not agree. In fact, part of their agreement is that other utilities charge convenience fee for this service. And in communication with county staff, the vendor gave examples of other fees, but these fees, the 4 examples they provided, the fees are all lower than the amount that the vendor is proposing here. And to the chairman's point, 50 cents may not be a lot to some people, but to many people across Miami-Dade County, those people that are living off Social Security checks or those people that are struggling to pay the rent, 50 cents every month is a big deal, especially when we could have just taken this out for an RFP and perhaps had a company that would have agreed to do it at the prior rate. I am not a rubber stamp, and I was not elected to be a rubber stamp. It also turns out that by the time a new payment solution is in place, we could be looking at about mid-2027. 2027. Unfortunately, Donald Trump's only going to have one more year at that point. I understand we're between a rock and a hard place. The vendor has 99% of the leverage here, but I'm not for scare tactics. And I already know, as the chairman has stated, that the mayor is not going to allow the people of Miami-Dade County to get their water shut off. I also understand that in the grand scheme of things, some people, like, we just said, it was just a small fee. Not for everybody. Not for most people in my district. But the attitude I'm trying to avoid, and I'm going to be voting no on this today, out of principle that in the future, let's get our stuff together. And I understand what happened. We had an extensive conversation about this, but this is going to be a lesson that in the future, we're gonna proactively look at these contracts. We're gonna proactively make sure that the county attorney's office is on top of these contracts as well. And we're gonna make sure that we're not in this position ever again, and that no company is able to just increase a fee on our constituents porque se le da la gana. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, you're recognized.
So good, Commissioner Gonzalez. Thank you to the administration for providing us with alternate solutions here. This is an item that we deferred in our committee because there was a raising of the rates on our residents, and we were being asked to retroactively approve that increase. And we asked the company to appear at our committee, and they gracefully sent us an email saying that they were not able to, which we respected. But it's my understanding that they're here today. Is ACI present? Which I really appreciate you coming and joining us. If you don't mind having a representative approach the podium, I'd like to ask just a few questions. And listen, to ACI, I don't fault you at all. You're a business. You're here to make profit. You've provided us with excellent customer service since 2003. We've been in and under contract with you since 2003. Moreover, I applaud you for not raising your rates during the duration of that contract. You have maintained your contractual obligations to this county under that contract during the entirety of that time. And as businesses do, and again, I don't fault you for what you did, upon the contract's expiration, you saw an opportunity, I presume. And the opportunity was to make more money for your shareholders, for your company. I don't fault you. That's exactly what you are supposed to be doing as a private, for-profit company and business. And so we are here because the board was not notified prior to the expiration of the contract, which placed us in a bind, kind of forcing us to sign on to the approval after the fact. And that's what we took issue with, especially and particularly because it affected the pocketbooks of our residents, and we're elected to obviously oversee that and obviously it's a responsibility that we take very seriously. And so my question to ACI is, considering the fact that you have been a partner and a good standing partner of Miami-Dade County since 2003, and I anticipate, because I believe that this is going to go out for procurement, if it's not already under the process, you have been partners with us for so long, I would imagine that you're well positioned to potentially win that RFP and stay with us presumably and potentially for another 20 years. Is it completely outside of your consideration, considering the comments that you've heard from our chair and from the chair of our Public Safety Committee and others on this dais? Is it entirely impossible for you as a company to maintain the rates that you have maintained since 2003 up until 2024 without changing it for one more year. Your bottom line won't allow you to do that under any set of circumstances, so that we can continue doing business with you as usual, have you compete for the RFP. I would just like to hear on the record, I know that's what the representation is, but I'm asking you directly whether it is within your company's at all possible power to maintain the rates for one more year to allow us to get past this hump. And before you answer that, actually go ahead and answer that, and I'll continue thereafter.
Sure. Thank you,
Thank
first
you
of
for your
all, the
patience.
question. Can you hear me? My name's Tony Carmona. I'm one of the directors of customer success for ACI. To answer your question briefly, with the way the program is structured today, which has basically an uncapped maximum payment amount up to $100,000, $99,999,999, and the cost associated with processing those transactions, we could not continue to support the card payments for that $395 price. Someone said earlier that we would be open to continuing to act as the processor for ACH payments if that was the decision of the board. The only caution that I would provide there was provided by somebody else as well, that about 15% of the residents of Miami-Dade County are either unbanked or underbanked, meaning they do not even have access to a traditional checking or savings account.
Right.
And beyond that, you have a number of residents who are on government assistance programs, unemployment, and other government benefits which are loaded to prepaid debit cards. So if you decide to go that route and not take the card payments, then you have to worry about how those customers would be impacted by that decision as well.
Okay, so the answer is no, you're not willing to maintain the rates at the $395. The $449 is a mandatory kind of firm decision that you and ACI have made.
Yes, and let me give a little bit of description about that, because there was some reference by Commissioner Gonzalez to the chart that we provided about other utility companies and their fee structures. The two most critical drivers of the cost to process a card transaction are the dollar amount of the payment and the type of cards that's used to make the payment. With the examples that we cited in the briefing we gave to the committee before this meeting, there are caps on the maximum payment amounts, usually imposed of about $1,000 per payment. So that effectively means a customer that needs to make a payment in excess of $1,000 has to make more than one transaction and pay more than one fee. The only other utility in this area that takes payments as large as the ones Miami-Dade Water and Sewer takes today is Florida Power and Light. And they recognize the excessive costs that those card transactions cost when a commercial entity uses a high-cost card. So to give you an idea of what that would look like, if our average cost for interchange, which is the fees paid to the bank, is about 1.5%, that means on a $100 transaction on average, that transaction, just that part of the cost, is $1.50. If it's a $10,000 payment, it's $150. So when you take payments as large as $100,000, and the rates actually can go as high as 2.5% or 3%, the reason the price is $449 instead of some other number is because the money collected by regular residential customers paying smaller bills is helping to cover the cost from the high-end commercial customers using expensive cards.
And thank you for expressing that and for articulating that. I wanted to give it a shot, and I appreciate you indulging me, but for my own benefit, I needed to ask the question directly. And so we find ourselves in a bind where, there is some angst about raising these fees. And it's particularly interesting because in 2023, this board passed a resolution that I sponsored that directs the administration to not wait any shorter period of time other than 2 years before the expiration of a contract before putting it out for procurement. And the resolution that passed by this board went on to say, in the event that you are falling behind, but in no event later than 1 year before the termination of a contract, you let us know, like send us a warning flag, like jump up and down, we're coming close to the expiration of a contract, in anticipation of situations precisely like this. That resolution was entirely disregarded from 2023, and so here we sit in 2025. I appreciate the options that have been provided. I don't know what the will of the board is. I understand that payments need to be made electronically. It is a convenience fee. I pay my water bill electronically with a credit card, and I know many others that do. My question for the administration is a rather simple one. Because we sit here not at the fault of the residents, but rather at a shortcoming of ours, I'm going to own it and say we're all one team here. We did not procure a new contract within enough time to allow this contract to not expire, which caused the situation that we're in right now, which is only being borne, the burden of which, by the residents of Miami-Dade County. Is there a way, should a resident want to be reimbursed for the increase in this fee, that they would be able to? Because I don't think that they should have to pay it if they don't want to, at least and only exclusively for a year, so that those residents that are seniors or on fixed income or extremely low income that don't have the ability to fund, yes, it's only 50 cents for some, but it's a lot for others, would there be the opportunity for them to potentially get reimbursed at least for a year, so that ACI can make the money that they absolutely need to make? They are not doing anything wrong except being good business people the way that they're supposed to. We have tried to prohibit this situation from coming forward. I do not want our residents to bear the burden of this issue. Is there a way to create a reimbursement process for our residents?
Let me ask that.
Chief?
For the record, Roy Coley. Commissioner, traditionally, that would not be likely. However, you might recall a few years ago, Mayor Cava set up a WASD Cares Fund that we were collecting for helping those in need. And I believe we might be able to tap that fund to reimburse that additional 53 cents if you wanted us to do that. I would have to get the mechanics of it figured out. I can't answer that here, but there is some amount of money in that WASD Cares Fund that could be used for that and do exactly what you're saying.
I appreciate that. I don't know how many residents will take advantage of it. Might be none, it might be 1,000, it might be 100. But I would think that within our budget here in Miami-Dade County, when we pass items like $10 million to FIFA, when we have residents that cannot pay an increased fee that they are having to pay because of something we didn't do and that we could have easily prevented, I think that the right thing to do and the good thing to do is to offer them some sort of a reimbursement. And so if there is a fund out there that we could possibly utilize for that, I don't know what the dollar amount is of that fund, but I appreciate your willingness to trigger it for this, and then we'll notify our residents, and whoever is subject to this and wants to get that reimbursement will be able to out of that CARES fund. So I appreciate that. With that, I can support this item, because then again, it won't make a difference to our residents. And if it's the will of the board to go with one of the options as outlined by ACI and the administration, option 2 would be the option that I would elect, because I think it has the least fiscal impact to our residents. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, all right. I'm going to make a motion, and then we could continue discussing, but so we can try to wrap this up. So I'll move to pass the item with option 2 per the supplement provided by the administration. But I would also add, unless there's pushback from the administration, and that's okay, you're in the supplement, Madam Mayor, there's a 120-day window to advertise for a competitive solicitation. I would just ask that we make that 60-day rather than 120. I don't think it's a complex bid. NAMID is more than welcome to push back on my request, but I don't think it's that complex. That would be my amendment, is to go with option 2 from the recommended supplement, but narrowing that 120-day so the advertisement schedule to 60 days.
Mr. Chair, we would certainly be happy to set that as a goal. The reason why we set that days the way we did, that the item is going to go through an IT review as well as the scoping. So there's a handful of departments has to sign off on this particular item before it goes to NAMDA. NAMDA has told us within 30 or 45 days she can have it on the street once we can get everything written and signed off. We could set that as a goal, but we might fall a few days short of your goal.
Well, I don't want to set you up for failure, nor this
about
government.
90?
Let's settle at 90, and let's encourage IT to start using AI. I guarantee you it will expedite things a bit. ChatGPT, Claude, I mean, whatever it is. So with the amendment with the amendment that Cohen-Higgins mentioned of exploring the CARES Fund, was that the name of it? The CARES Fund? For reimbursement purposes.
It's called WASD Cares.
Okay, so WASD does care, and these commissioners care as well, and the mayor cares. So so as amended, option 2, with the WASD cares and with the 90-day advertisement schedule. And you will not try, it will be within 90 days, right? Perfect. I move it as such.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Cohen-Higgins. Is there still further discussion now that we're on the same page? Okay, but, all right, so this will be your second bite at the apple. Let me go around, I'll come back to you. Commissioner Bermudez, Vice Chair Regalado.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, and I'll probably support the item. But I've got, there's two things I want to ask. First of the administration is, how did we get here? A company that's been doing this since 2003. But wasn't there any increases built into the contract? Can you just give me a brief explanation of how this happened?
Do you want me to Are you talking to me?
Yes, sir, you can sit down, is what I'm saying.
thank you.
I was trying not to interrupt the commissioner.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bermudez. Of course, this contract has been going on for many years, and the vendor has held that price for the entire duration. We've been under the same price. In 2023, the administration recognized that the contract needed to be renegotiated and began exploring whether this would be some type of contract amendment or whether it would be a sole source, a standard RFP. And so that process has been going on since 2023 to finally negotiate to where we got to late last year, and then ultimately getting on to the agenda now. So that's how we got where we are. But the vendor has been a very long-time vendor who has not increased their fees until this contract expired.
Look, anytime you use a credit card, there will be a fee. Okay, and I'm not talking about the interest. It doesn't matter if you're the richest guy in America, the poorest guy in America. If you use a credit card, you have to pay. That's what their business model is. All of these cards are. But the processors, that's the model. In fact, there's an acronym. I forget the acronym now that regulates it. But so I don't have a problem to try to make sure that we do this for a year. But I also don't want to lie to the residents of Miami-Dade that as we move forward, we're going to have to, whether it's with them or somebody else, there's still gonna be a charge. Okay. In fact, it doesn't matter what your income level is. If you use that card at Publix, same thing applies. So there's two concerns that I've got. Number one, how did we get here? Because, I think we've had way too many issues with contracts that are coming up and we're just not ready. It is not just with you guys, by the way, not just your department. We're just not ready. And we get it at the last moment, and then we have to try to get an extension, and then this happens, examples of what we're doing today. But and the second thing is, there is a price for government no matter what anybody says. We can get rid of all the taxes we want, but then you can't build parks, you can't build roads. There's a purpose for local government, state government, federal government, and it is a federal republic, as Commissioner Gonzalez has said correctly. But local government, I don't like paying taxes, but if we don't pay taxes, and we don't have fees, then we don't get roads, we don't get parks. And I think that our responsibility has to be, as hopefully we will be, much more efficient than we've been in the past. But I also don't want to lie to the public and say, you know, nobody's going to pay anything for anything. Because, first of all, that's not truthful. So I'm going to vote for this because it's a 1 year, whatever your WASD Care funds, right? Is that what it's called, WASD Cares?
Yes, sir.
Does it have a logo, by the way? Okay, just curious. It would be good marketing. But anyways, I'm going to support it because of that. But I have, grave concerns, and I caution my colleagues as we move forward and we look at this contract a year from now to understand that whoever does this, whether it's this company or somebody else, can't do it for free. And don't tell me we're going to build our own system, because we're still going to. There's still going to be federal regulations that we're going to have to apply with, because that's the ultimate government answer. Don't worry. Which is why when we get to our committee to talk to IT, it's going to be a very interesting conversation, because even now, Roy, you mentioned that one of the problems with getting this done in 60 days would be that IT. And maybe, I suppose, maybe some other departments besides water and sewer have to, weigh in on this. And I can tell you, every time we have to deal with IT, it is not a 60-day period. Okay? So I'm going to support it, but, I'm going to reiterate some of my colleagues' statements, and I just want to caution everybody, a year from now, and I don't know how many people are going to use the WASD Care funds, but at a year from now, all of us in Miami-Dade County are going to have to pay. It's kind of like paying for garbage. It doesn't distinguish between somebody that lives in Commissioner Bastien's district or mine. We all have to pay. The myth that only one group is going to have to pay, or one type of citizen or one district, is something that should not be said to the residents of this county. And I'll support it, but I'm waiting to see a year from now, and whether it's this company or whoever their competitors are, that we make a decision, and in that contract, we make it clear that, if they agree to, for 20 years, not increase that fee, God bless. Put it in writing then, so we don't have to come back and deal with an issue like this one.
Thank you, Commissioner. Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll tell you, look, the issue that I have with this item is that I understand there's a committee process and things go through committee and so forth, but, and I appreciate WASI trying to reach out to me, but this is first news that I hear about. None of the vendor communicated anything with my office. And for that reason, I'm not going to vote for anything that's going to increase anything on anyone without having a correct conversation with the vendor themselves, so that's why I'm going to be voting no.
Thank you, Senator. Vice Chairman. Commissioner Regalado.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a few things. When we talk about residential and commercial payments in this world, and the big amounts can be a condominium or an apartment, right? So what we're distinguishing from is when I pay my water bill or when you pay your water bill versus when a condo pays their water bill. So I don't want people to think that because we're saying commercial and that the amounts are larger, that we're not dealing with a human, right, who needs to pay their bill. So in many cases, the larger amounts may actually be individuals that are lower in income than the single amounts, because they live in apartments, or they live in units where it's a shared bill that then gets prorated. One of the items that I brought a few years ago was now when we have new construction, we force them to have separate water bills for the residential and the commercial, because that's something that historically wasn't done. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, and I've mentioned this before, specifically when it comes to WASD, I am a big fan, and I think it should be true for WASD, and it should also be true for RER. These two enterprise systems that forward face our residents should have their own IT. They should not be held hostage by IT. Because, one of the reasons that this gets so out of control and all these different things happen is because they cannot work on their systems. And I've mentioned it when we talk about RER and the digitizing of their permits and how long all of that is taking. But everything from updating a website to approving an RFP just takes so much longer because they have to wait in line with everyone else that has made a request from IT. So I think for these two departments that forward face, whether it's your permit or whether it's your water bill, we should embed IT, and that IT should work day to day, hand in hand with those departments, and that would make it easier for them to meet some of the goals because they are dependent on all these other departments telling them that they have a problem because they don't have someone in-house that is telling them to raise that flag. So you have my commitment. You know, the director has been great. Staff has been wonderful trying to find solutions, and I appreciate the acceptance of one of the options. But know that this was done a very, very long time ago, and that we've discussed a million different ways where the RFP that's coming out can be more forward-thinking and could give people more options so that they can make these choices. But even the use of the WASD Cares, now they're going to have to they're going to have to put it in the ticket for IT, ask IT to change the website to add what WASD Cares pay for, so the people that are donating to WASD Care know that now this is the thing. You know, the whole thing is just, you know, very complex unnecessarily when they could just have some folks embedded that can just go in and do that immediately based on what the director has prioritized and not based on the history of the tickets that have been put in by different people in the departments.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm gonna call a question. All right, everybody went? Everybody got their shot? Nice. All right, so oh, wait, because you were waiting for, I thought I had gone to you and then you forfeited your. All right, go ahead.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, every on issues relating to WASD, they always look to the guru on this board, Raquel Regalado, for that. So she answered quite a few of my questions, and I just wanted to put on the record that, I wanted to see that date from 120 days to 90 days. We checked off on that option 2 if that were the case, and now I'm going to follow. Sounds like someone's ready to donate money to a not-for-profit.
Vice Chair, let's go.
I'm just going to follow my colleague Regalado on this issue because she's been in the trenches on this one. So thank you.
So we're clear, Mr. Attorney. We don't need to repeat everything that I already said, right? It's with the it's with option 2, with both amendments, 90 days, WASD Cares, and/or an alternative reimbursement method for said payers. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Show the item pass. Madam Attorney, can we go into substantive motions? We'll leave the appointments and allocations for afterwards, but.
Mr. Chair, we have no other substantive motions. What's remaining is the legislative approval motions.
Okay, let's go through that.
Pursuant to Rule 5.06A4 of this board's rules of procedure, Commissioner Hardiman moves to extend for 90 days the approval period for all legislative requests eligible for an extension made by Commissioner Hardiman. Additionally, also pursuant to Rule 5.06A4, Chairman Rodriguez, Vice Chairman McGee, Commissioner Bastien, Commissioner Bermudez, Commissioner Cabrera, Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, Senator Garcia, Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Regalado each move, and Commissioner Gilbert and Commissioner Higgins request that another commissioner move on their behalf to extend indefinitely the approval period for all legislative requests eligible for an extension made by each respective commissioner.
All right, so there's been a motion by Commissioner Hardiman. There's a second by Commissioner Bastien. Is there discussion on clarification on this? Commissioner Steinberg, you're recognized.
I just have a question. I know we had a conversation about holds being indefinite, not indefinite. And I don't know, as a matter of transparency, maybe we can have a list of what those holds are that we're approving for indefinite holds that we may never have the opportunity to bring legislation forward on because someone else has a hold. Just my 2 cents on the issue.
So here's what I would say to not, because I believe I'm having deja vu. We've had like an hour discussion on this. We're not going to have this discussion. Here's what I would say to that. There is a method for anybody that has a hold. Here's the secret. There is a method for you to still bring that item forward. You just have to waive the rules at the time and get a supermajority. So we have a vehicle to, through a sunshine, of course, through a sunshine meeting. But we have a vehicle to do that. So with that, Commissioner Hardeman moves it. We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Show the item passed. Next motion. All right.
Motion to adjourn is in order.
Well, do we have allocations or any? No? All right. Show us adjourned.